I'm sorry I gotta leave you. Oh, I'm sorry I gotta leave you. I'm going to the promised land. I'm sorry, I gotta leave you. I'm going to the promised land. Oh, farewell, farewell. Now go to the promised land, over to Jordan, but I'll meet you in the morning. Oh, farewell, farewell.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the 25th anniversary celebration of the National Underground Railroad Networks of Freedom program. Today, we tribute the program's glorious 25-year service by highlighting the inspiring stories of hope, resilience, and freedom. This program has been instrumental in bringing light to the exceptional efforts of all those who risked everything to break free from the shackles of slavery and pave the way towards justice and equality. Congress launched the Networks of Freedom program in July 21st, 1998. The program has since then identified and documented 744 sites, programs, and research centers worldwide. Thanks to this national initiative enacted by Congress, we've been able to establish the Networks of Freedom program, and through this program, we are now beginning to understand more about the extent of the Underground Railroad Network. We are pleased to recognize the outstanding accomplishment at the Harriet Tubman Underground Railroad Visitor Center. This center pays tribute to the remarkable legacy of Harriet Tubman and the many courageous individuals who sought freedom, served as guides, and created safe havens along the Underground Railroad. Their courageous deeds and selfless sacrifices have significantly contributed to the progress of our nation toward freedom and encourage future generations. The program has been instrumental in safeguarding their stories, enhancing our comprehension of the complexities involved in the Underground Railroad, and reiterating the continuing fight for fairness. Through constructive discussions, films, and visits to sites associated with freedom-seeking and resistance efforts, we deepen our appreciation for the struggles and triumphs of all those who journeyed through the Underground Railroad. We must honor their memory by continuing the work of preserving history, promoting social justice, and championing the cause for freedom. We express our heartfelt gratitude to the National Park Service, Networks of Freedom staff, academic historians, researchers, network partners, and local and national organizers who are demonstrating unwavering commitment. Their efforts have allowed us to view the past with greater empathy and understanding. And with that, I just want to thank you all for being here. We're so thrilled to start the Silver Jubilee celebration. We hope that this program will continue to be a source of inspiration and education for future generations in the fight for freedom and justice. Thank you so much. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to our National Program Manager, Diane Miller.
Thank you, Venus, and thank all of you for coming and all of you who might be watching on YouTube. I have many more things that I need to give. And first is to Dana Patera and her staff here at the Harriet Tubman Underground Railroad State Park who have put up with us and helped us with all of these logistics. I also have to thank the staff of the Harriet Tubman Underground Railroad National Historical Park, Tim Van Cleve and Superintendent John Mitchell, who've been a great help to the program. And huge thanks to former National Service Director Robert Stanton. He's been, through the years, the most staunch and loyal supporter of the program, which we have greatly appreciated. welcome Shelley C. Lowe, the Chair of the National Endowment of the Humanities, and the Senior Deputy Chair, Anthony Mitchell, who are joining us today. And from our National Park Service Washington office, Jennifer Hawkins-Spalding, who is the Bureau Cultural Anthropologist with the Office of Tribal Relations and American Cultures. And I don't believe he's here, but I want to thank Ed Steerley from the National Parks Conservation Association, who would sponsor reception for us here at the end of the program. And Sylvia Cyrus, the Executive Director of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, who has been our partner on many, many projects. I wouldn't say partner in crime, but I don't want to incriminate her. And I want to thank especially any members of the network that are here, and I know that we have many partners that are here that we have worked with over the years. So if any of you are here, if you'd like to just stand up for a moment. I know I see my Maryland friends. We are. It did not be a Network of Freedom program for 25 years if it wasn't for all of these people and their counterparts across the country who have really been doing the heavy lifting for this story for decades and decades. So just to give you a little bit of context for the Network of Freedom, of all the horrors of slavery, the cruelest was its effect on the spirit of the enslaved. Frederick Douglass, who escaped in 1838 and became an Underground Railroad operative and a leading anti-slavery orator, described the period of his enslavement when he became a field hand to a notorious slave breaker. In his account, Douglass acknowledged that after a few months I was broken in body, soul, and spirit. My natural elasticity was crushed. My intellect languished. The dark night of slavery closed in upon me. Abolitionist Wendell Phillips, in a letter to Douglass, published as a preface to the autobiography, lauded him for describing the wretchedness of slavery by the cruel and blighting death which gathers over the soul. John Parker was enslaved in Norfolk, Virginia. In 1827, he was born. At the age of 8, he was sold on the slave block and forced to walk to Mobile, Alabama. After several unsuccessful attempts, he was able to purchase his freedom when he was 18. He settled on the banks of the Ohio River in Ripley, Ohio, and became a very prominent and successful operative on the Underground Railroad, daring to go into Kentucky and even steal an enslaved child out of the bedroom of the enslavers so that the child's parents would be willing to escape. Reflecting on his life, Parker described, he soon learned that there was not so much brutality in slavery as one might expect. It was an incident to the curse. But the real injury was the making of a human being, an animal without hope. Now that it is all over, as I have previously stated, I know slavery's curse was not pain of the body, but the pain of the soul. The humanity of the enslaved individuals is central to understanding the resistance movement known as the Underground Railroad. When Calvin Banks asked Louis Hayden why he wanted to be free, Hayden replied, "Because I'm a man." Freedom seekers are at the center of the story of the Underground Railroad, for without those people who self-liberated, there would be no Underground Railroad. While allies were critical to the success, the central story of the Underground Railroad is resistance to enslavement through escape and flight. Freedom seekers had to overcome the soul-destroying nature of enslavement to self-liberate. They often had to leave behind family and everyone they knew and loved. While several factors could precipitate self-liberation, it was the compelling need for freedom and self-determination that sustained freedom seekers. This is the history that the National Underground Railroad Network of Freedom seeks to unravel. The movement, both historically and contemporaneously, was a grassroots effort. The threads of these stories have remained alive in accounts passed through the generations. Modern efforts by descendants and communities to preserve and share their stories led to legislation creating the Network of Freedom in 1998. 25 years ago today, President Clinton signed our legislation, and In one of those pictures is our esteemed former director, Bob Stanton. The legislation defines the Underground Railroad as one of the most significant expressions of the American Civil Rights Movement. The Network to Freedom commemorates, honors, and interprets the history of the Underground Railroad, extols the historical significance of the Underground Railroad and the eradication of slavery, and highlights its relevance in fostering a spirit of racial harmony and national reconciliation. Through its mission, the Network to Freedom helps to advance the idea that all human beings embrace the right to self-determination and freedom from oppression. The network is a community engagement program that coordinates preservation and education efforts nationwide. By empowering communities to tell their own story, the network is working to integrate local historical sites, museums, and interpretive programs associated with the Underground Railroad into a mosaic of community, regional, and national stories. The National Park Service owns neither the resources associated with this history nor the stories that it seeks to share. The federal goal in this effort is to facilitate the efforts of communities. The heart of the program is the evaluated list of historic sites, interpretive and educational programs, and interpretive and educational facilities that have a verifiable connection to the Underground Railroad. So after 25 years, we've included 743 members across 39 states, DC, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. This represents 540 historic sites, 129 educational programs, and 75 facilities. Once accepted into the network, members may use the program's unique logo on their markers, websites, and publications. This logo is meant to visually unify this broad movement so that it can be recognized by visitors. The professional independent evaluation is often critical to the survival and success of struggling historic sites and interpretive programs. So I want to step back for a moment and just reflect on the very first year that the network started accepting members. We had 58 members in our first year of applications in 2001, representing 8 states. We had 6 facilities, 11 programs, and 41 sites. So over the years, we've grown a bit. And I do want to just call out the list of the 19 members that were part of that first group in 2001. Fort Pulaski National Monument in Georgia, which is a National Park Service site. In Iowa, the Nishnabotna Ferry House. In Kansas, Constitution Hall, Topeka. And the Watkins Community Museum of History. In Massachusetts, the Jackson House, the Taffy Philbrook House, Wayside, which is part of the Minuteman National Historical Park, in the William Ingersoll Bowditch House. In Maryland, the Maryland State Archives for their collection of documents that you can use to research the Underground Railroad. In Mississippi, the Forks Over Road Enslavement Market. In New York, Murphy Orchards, which was a program in the very, very first member of the Network to Freedom. And regrettably, Carol Murphy passed away a few years ago, so the program has been around this long. Richardson Bates House Museum in Ohio, the John P. Parker House, who I quoted, Robert Fee House, Underground Railroad and its connection to the Ohio Valley, which was an interpretive program, in Vermont, Ropey Museum, in Wisconsin, Milton House Museum, the Milton House Museum Tour, and Racing Heritage Museum. So clearly, we would not have these 19 or the rest of the 59 first-year members of the network if that work had not been going on for years and years before the network was ever created. But all of this collective work by all of you in communities, I see it as a large public history program to uncover this history of the Underground Railroad. And contrary to what I've been told probably thousands of times that we can't document this history, you really can, and the Network to Freedom proves that. So the Network Network Freedom Act directs us to educate the public about the significance of the Underground Railroad. Scholarship on this topic has just blossomed since 1998. So the Network to Freedom has commissioned a new version of our handbook. This is the old version. The new one is not printed yet, but there is a website that has all of the essays and some supplementary information about it. We also have initiated an updated National Historic Landmark theme study. And we'll brag on this for a second. We did what Park Service people will know as a Unigroup or Shore describing program. This won a National Association of Interpreters Media Award. We did a video, Fighting for Freedom, Lewis Hayden and the Underground Railroad, which tried to tell the main themes of the Underground Railroad through the lens of a specific individual. And this also won a media award. Both of these you can find on our website. We have a really exciting thing that we're launching today called Question and Conversations. So I'll let you dig around on our website to find that, but it's an effort to match up-and-coming scholars with figures from popular culture to have conversations that will talk about this history and try to make it more relevant to a younger audience, and we're really hoping to engage young people with that. The last part of our mandate is technical assistance, and it's through this that I think we've really developed so many friendships and partnerships over the years that have really just been the heart of the program. And I've been humbled and inspired and motivated by the dedication and the accomplishments of our hundreds of partners. I think it's what has kept me working in this program for 25 years. But it's what has really saved this history since the 19th century, and it will save it into the 22nd century. So with that, I need to introduce Bob Stanton, who is our former director. He's also a senior advisor to the Secretary of the Department of Interior. He's a scholar in residence at the University of Missouri in St. Louis. He's a private lecturer in natural and cultural and resource preservation and park management. And many more things that we're taking the rest of this time to tell you. But he's been our biggest supporter, and we are always so glad to hear from Bob and his inspirational words. So I will turn this over to Mr. Stanton.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Dr. Miller, for that gracious introduction. And certainly thank you for the kind invitation for me to spend some time with you. When I received the invitation from Diane, I posed a question: what would be appropriate for me to share with such a distinguished audience? And without hesitation, she commented, said, "Bob, I know that you're a proud native son of Texas, and I would just only ask that you exercise two characteristics of which all native Texans are known." And my son is here with me, who is also a native Texan. He can applaud to this, but I'm sure I won't get an applause from you. But those two characteristics are simply this: humility and brevity. And she said, respond, and not necessarily the order. But I will be humble, because it is on the foundation of so many that have gone before that have given us the opportunity to be where we are today. But to be brief, in the land of Harry Tubman and the land of Mr. Douglas is difficult. My friends, whom I worked with for a span of 35 years, been coupled with just another 5 years, total of 40 years in the Department of Interior, they know that anytime the name of Mr. Douglas is raised, be prepared to steal for breakfast. But I won't go on with that. Diane gave an excellent poem of the letter of the spirit of the legislation establishing the National Underground Railroad for Freedom. My heart is made glad by seeing so many of you in the audience who have been with us from day one when President Bill Clinton signed the Organic Act of the Underground Railroad on July 1, 1990, 25 years ago from this day. But I think it might be helpful in applauding you collectively and individually, those who have been on the journey for those 25 years, to sort of understand and appreciate how our government works. Because no program comes about just because someone wants it to. In 1990, Congress authorized a bill, signed into law by President Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush, directing that the Secretary of the Interior appoint a distinguished committee or advisory board made up of 9 scholars to study the feasibility as well as people as a nation. We could commemorate or should commemorate this chapter in our collective history known as the Underground Railroad. And it also directed that the Secretary, through the National Park Service, publish an official handbook, and Diane spoke to them. Those legislative mandates were met in a qualitative way and in a short period of time. And through the Park Service, the Secretary was able to fulfill the commitment of the study and the handbook. The study was submitted by the Secretary to the President to Congress. Congress, in a strong bipartisan way, and I underscore the little commentary there, a bipartisan way, a bill that we know as the National Underground Railroad. But that bill had some stipulation. One was that it would have a ceiling in terms of how much money Congress would be authorized to appropriate to carry out the letter and spirit of that. It had a ceiling of $500,000. Not much you can do in today's market, $500,000. So again, in a bipartisan way, and representing the hard work of you, ladies and gentlemen, Congress considered the needs of this program. And again, passed a bill substantially increasing the appropriation authority. $2.5 million to be appropriated annually. $2 million to carry out the program with an increased staff and what have you. Plus, and I know this brought a smile to some of your faces, plus it gave the National Park Service the authority to make grants. I mean, like dollars going through at the level of $500,000 per year. And that was magnificent. And then Congress did not stop there. It said, well, we need to give further recognition to the Underground Railroad. Again, expressing the interest of the American people as manifested by the work that you, ladies and gentlemen, have been doing and continue to do. You said that the legacy, the enduring legacy of Mrs. Tubman should be recognized. Not only here, but in New York, where she spent many years. So we know here in the state of Maryland, the Harriet Tubman Underground Railroad National Historical Park, and in New York, the Harriet Tubman National Historical Park. But I have to tell you that there were a couple of things that preceded that. In 2013, exercising the authorities of the Antiquities Act of 1906, President Obama signed and issued a presidential proclamation designating the Harriet Tubman National Monument 2013. It was my honor to accompany then Secretary of the Interior, Ken Salazar, and then Director of the National Park Service, John Jones, to come here to make that announcement. But I have to full disclosure, the federal government was catching because the good people of Maryland recognized the giant leadership the leadership of Harry Tubman. And in 2007, the state of Maryland authorized the Harry Tubman Underground Railroad State Park. Ladies and gentlemen, my hand to the good people of Maryland. I will close, because it's difficult to do this, okay? And think about Mr. Tubman and Mr. Douglas, and we're here, the faces of them. I'll just share with you a couple of perspectives that have developed over a span of many years. Been involved in this business called resource preservation and conservation for some 60 years. And having experienced the pain and the stings of that insidious doctrine handed down by the Supreme Court in 1896 that spoke to us as a people and nation that while we're all citizens, nothing is wrong about us living separate, but there was never equal about that. But I experienced it for 24 years. So out of all the experiences, I have evolved this philosophy, is that if we were to consider the road over which we have traveled as a people, as a nation, from 1776, we have stumbled, we have erred, we've made gross mistakes. But one thing that they tell me that a mature person, and I liken that to a nation, can recognize publicly that you made a mistake. But that's only half. Half of it, do you have the will to learn and not to repeat that mistake? The Underground Railroad teaches us those lessons. There should have never been an Underground Railroad, because there should have never been slavery. But slavery exists. How are we going to learn from the past and move forward? Lastly, at the invitation of Congressman Jim Clyde, when I was serving on the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, invited me to a major sermon that was to be held in the Emancipation Hall in the new Congressional Business Center to mark a major milestone in our collective journey. The program involved President Obama leading the delegation of the leadership of the House and the Senate. And they all had the opportunity to express their sentiments about the occasion. And as I sat there, my hands trembled. My heart ached. And yes, my eyes were. For the occasion provoked me to really understand, really revisit the journey over which our ancestors have traveled. My mind wanted to really stop at 1776. They said, no, let's be honest about the journey of our ancestors. So my mind said, why don't we travel back to Point Comfort on the shores of Virginia, where the ship brought to those shores, and as the manifesto reads, 20 and odd, as if you were counting lumber or sheep or whatever. 20 and odd. Well, my said, no, to really understand the journey over which our ancestors traveled, why don't we take a little ship sail, what was to become known as the Middle Passage, and why don't we go to South That was the trauma of our ancestors coming to these shores. So from the 20 and on, coming ashore, 1619, they were soon to be relocated to Jamestown. One company is now a part of Footman Road National Monument, preserved and interpreted by your National Park Service. Jamestown is a part of your National Park System, preserved and interpreted by your National Park Service. So laboring, suffering, dying, brutality, contributing to the growth of our economy over a span of over 100 years. Lord, behold, the colonists said, yeah, we are now prepared to create our own nation. Went to war. And yes, 5,000 of our ancestors joined under the leadership of President George Washington, leading that battle. And I'm sure that our ancestors thought, well, we're contributing so much, that maybe they'll recognize that we too like freedom. But that was not to be. Well, somebody penned this document and used that expression. All men are created. I know our ancestors fought in the war, contributed. We must be included in the we. That later on, the war 1812, 13, 14, we too picked up arms in the defense of this country. He said, maybe, just maybe, we would be recognized. That was not to be. Notwithstanding that we had agreed to a document, a living document, 2 or 3 years after the Declaration of Independence, that has perhaps one of the most beautiful, inclusive pronouns that I have. We. So even with that document, we would be included. That was not to be. He said, well, maybe not in that document, maybe in the first 5, 10 amendments, we will be included. And the documents came about because the framers recognized that the Constitution as written would not stand the time of a new and changing world, a changing nation. So they had enough, you see it take enough gumption to add in the body of the Constitution, Article 5, that allowed that document to be amended. And as the amendments were taking place, and look at the beautiful pronoun, be the people of the United States, we were not included. And the war came, 1861. The war came. 600,000 blood, sweat, and tears. The war came. And as we were seeking those who were missing, finding the wounds of those who were suffering on the battlefield, and burying our dead, we the people of the nation said that it is time. It is time that we revisit the we. December 1865. which was the occasion of why I sat in the auditorium to witness President Obama, the Speaker of the House, and the Majority Leader of the Senate, each in their own way, spoke specifically about 43 words, simply 43 words, that it took from 1619 to 1865 for us to draft, ratify, and to become effective. Think about it, my friends. Think about it. From 1619 to 1865. For the very first time in the history of the Declaration and the Constitution of the United States of America, the word slavery was used. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery. That is the journey of our ancestors. We need to understand and appreciate the gratitude, to recognize the importance of the Underground Road, how we sought freedom to know fresh air. And that should strengthen us. The 13th Amendment and the 14th Amendment, and I think most historians and others agree, combined, abolished, the right word, buried, threw in the fireplace. The Supreme Court decision handed down in 1856. And the Sanford Dred Scott decision, which declared our ancestors as being property, not jealously protected by the Constitution of the United States. That was a part of our journey. Knowing that journey allows us to recommit ourselves, to building a better nation, to understanding and appreciating the National Underground Railroad. And I will close, as I know you call it, with an African proverb. The wholeness of a people is diminished when the ancestors are not remembered and honored. We do not want to be diminished. We want to remember, we want to honor our ancestors. And I see that commitment manifested in the expression of your face. Thank you very much for allowing me to be an old timer. Thank you again.
I'm so honored to be here. Riding when I got the call to perform. I wanted to just take a minute to introduce the musicians, and then I'll talk a little bit about the Harriet Tubman Music and Education Center on Grace Street. So I have David Cole on banjo. And David Cole on washboard and everything in between. I get to wear a lot of hats here in Cambridge. I am the director of events at the Harriet Tubman Museum and Educational Center at 424 Ray Street. I'll repeat that. 424 Ray Street in Cambridge. And I invite all of you all to come and visit us. We do a lot of wonderful things. We lead walks. I have had the honor, in 2020 I walked from the Brothers Plantation to Philadelphia. And I knocked on Wayne Steele's door. I did it again in 2021. And in 2022, I led several walks. And in September this year, I'm going to walk from Auburn to St. Catherine's. And I do that in honor of the ancestors because I'm exceedingly proud could be the descendants of people who were brought here, enslaved in this country to make it amazing. We're going to do some code songs, signal songs. The enslaved people, I want to honor Harriet Tubman's grandmother, Modesty or Modesty. She was captured on the west coast of Africa in Ghana, part of the Asante tribe, and put on a slave ship along that little passage that took anywhere from 3 to 5 months. And I want you to imagine what it might have been like to be strapped in a slave ship, stacked like books on a bookcase, and made to endure that horrific journey. The enslaved people, they came from different parts of West Africa with different dialects. And they couldn't communicate initially. They came here and were forced to learn English. But initially they had their rhythms and their sounds and cadence that they brought with them, that evolved into all kinds of genres of music that we know now. So that was one of the many of our contributions to this country. So I want you to imagine, as I said, being on a slave ship, being taken from the motherland. You essentially become homeless, a motherless child.
Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like
On the Eastern Shore, downtown Railroad was started here. We know it so well because Harriet Tubman is a superhero,
Yeah.
all right? She walked the first time in 1849, walked 11 miles in the night following the North Star. Got to Philadelphia, got to freedom, worked, she was there, free woman, but it wasn't good enough for her. She came back. She came back 13 times. She didn't come. 70 people find freedom. That's pretty courageous. I am not certain if I walked. And I walked this trail. I didn't walk it at night. It was difficult. I wanted to come back. So that gives you an idea what kind of human being, what kind of good soul, faithful soul, obedient soul she was, and freedom people. So when I did this walk on the Underground Railroad, I went to REI and I got all the constantly on all this wicking and 5 pairs of shoes. Wicking material. I had a mosquito suit, a hat, a water bag, lots of snacks. And every 3 or 5 miles we stop and we drink our water and have our snacks. Well, Harriet Tubman didn't have that. The enslaved people didn't have that. And out here we got the sweet gum tree, and they dropped their little spores, and then they're prickly little things. And the enslaved people had to walk on those to find freedom. I felt the morning with my fancy shoes from REI. So this song is called I Got Shoes. And they were really saying, it's a metaphor. I got shoes, you got shoes. The enslaved people the enslavers had shoes, but we're going to walk anyway. And everybody with shoes ain't going to heaven. The enslavers learned to believe in God and God and goodness. So this song is about leaving, we're leaving you behind, and you can't come with us. So that's the song. God, it's prevail, oh my God. Okay, you know what? No, oh, no.
So we have some videos that we have been filming, interviewing some of our longtime members and partners. We're going to show you one piece of that. We're running a little bit late on time. But all of them we're going to be putting together and putting on our website so you'll be able to see those videos probably in the next maybe 2 weeks or so. So we're going to show you Maya Davis, who has worked with the program for a very long time, worked for the Maryland State Archives, and now works at Riversdale up in Pekin County. All right, so here's Maya.
Former plantation homes like this one actually saw a specific audience for many years, and now we are trying to transform and make sure that we tell our public we are a place for everyone. Everyone needs to see themselves here, feel a sense of belonging. We are a museum that was actually founded in 1993, so we're only 30 years old, but our house was built in 1801 and took a span of 6 years to complete. It was a Calvert and Steer property where we had members of the Steer family who came here from Antwerp in present-day Belgium, who were actually fleeing from the Reign of Terror under Napoleon. They came here, they brought with them at least like 14 enslaved people, and then over time, when you think about enslaved people being bequeathed, bought and sold, by the end of emancipation, we had upwards of 55 enslaved people here. We are a museum that's going through a transformation, and we're decentering the story of the white slaveholding family, but making sure that we share that space. We're not erasing, we are actually adding to and enhancing the stories of the enslaved. So we want to make sure that we're telling the voices of individuals who typically don't get to see the light of day in the narrative that we tell, whether that be through our exhibitions, through our tours, our public programming. We just want to give them credence because it would have been the overwhelming majority here. Our first involvement was at the Maryland State Archives, where we were a repository that was within the network for the National Capital Region. Our repository had numerous records from various counties across the state that lent itself to the story of the fight to freedom. We were able to look at penitentiary records, original newspapers, censuses for comparison, and so many other records, even down to slave statistics, which is traditionally a Maryland-centered record. You don't see that in any other state, but of course, after emancipation, people are trying to be compensated for the loss of enslaved labor, and all of the owners are putting the names down of individuals, and there are instances where you see them noting that this person has run off, but they're still expecting a compensation, which they never get, but they are looking for compensation, and so it gives us a large swath of people to identify as people who actually escaped at some point in time. So it's really helpful to have that information and then to turn around and be able to support other entities who are looking to join the network. I had a in and out movement with that process of setting up the Byway and the Visitor Center because of course I was on staff at the Maryland State Archives, and then somewhere in between I decided to go back to grad school and I needed internship credits. So I was already connected with the work for setting up the Byway, sitting in for meetings, community meetings, state of Maryland employee meetings. And I said, no, if you guys could find a way to just bring me in as an intern, I would really appreciate it. So I had a shared internship between the Office of Tourism and the Department of Natural Resources, where people like Ann Cowell and Marcy Ross, we did a lot of GPS spotting and tracking to make sure that we can block points of the byway. We once actually had a flat tire, and another person in the network, Kathy Mackel, actually caught us on the side of the road on the Eastern Shore and helped us use fix a flat and get our tire back together so that we can get back. That's one of the main things I really awesome about the network. It puts us all in touch with each other. Sometimes you may be like a site like mine at Riversdale, where you know you have Adam Francis Palmer here. Maybe there's a connection with Adam Francis Palmer at a historic church somewhere else. Maybe there's another home in New York State or Connecticut or something where he has a family member. There was an individual that I just discovered, Allison Blanford, and he actually was a baby essentially when his parents escaped from Maryland. And to be able to connect that with us, it was just so amazing. He was a painter, he was in the newspaper. It was just like awesome to kind of see this person that you don't even know exists, you know, on someone else's website, and the research is there, and you're like, I need to come back and see what we can do to kind of help merge that story and give it a fuller life, because I don't think they knew what his earlier life was in Maryland, and we were able to provide that information and vice versa. So it's a two-way street, and I think that's been very helpful. I think they promoted change in the trajectory of the Underground Railroad and what we know about it by making information more accessible. I think the more accessibility we have, the better people can get it at their fingertips. You know, before this, and many other avenues of research related to accessibility, you know, people would have to travel to these different repositories. And if you're in Kentucky and you're on a fixed income, it's not so easy to come out to Maryland and do the research for yourself. So by having this network, we don't all have to be in the same room. We can just go to the same website and download that information and get put in touch with another resource that I may not have known exists. You know, like we all bring different things to the table, and I think it helps us push the narrative of the fight to freedom.
Now I want to transition to a panel discussion. One of our discussants is not here with us. I think she was not able to make it over the bridge, but I wanted to have Mr. Stanton and Dr. Roy come up and join me up here. And I don't know, I guess we can ask them to come. Those who probably won't be able to see us for well, and hopefully they'll be able to hear us. So we wanted to talk a little bit about what we meant with them and this really important document and understanding the Underground Railroad has been about and what impact it had. So I thought I would ask the question for everybody, and how has establishing the network of freedom facilitated collaboration and partnership between various sites and programs? And can you think of any successful collaborations that have further commemoration in the Underground Railroad?
Well, thank you. And before I begin, I just want to acknowledge the passing of Charles Wilkinson. So I just want to take the minute and just to remember him, because he was so important to the work that we do. I first learned about the Network of Freedom program at the University of Delaware, probably in about 2001. And we were taught some of the ways in which we should be actually thinking about this network of freedom. Over the years, I would say that the biggest impact for me has been that every site I worked on, a number of historical sites. I often work with the National Park Service, and frequently when I come to those sites, there is no Underground Railroad discussion. Escape from slavery is not necessarily a topic, but I am almost always certain that if I look just a little bit, not too hard, that there are going to be stories of escape. And so what really has happened for me is that using the applications for the Network of Freedom to do what Maya has talked about, to really put these stories together, because someone who's in Kansas may well have started in Maryland or Virginia or Pennsylvania, and we don't know the whole story. So I find that the Network to Freedom both ties together the sites, whether it's, Oyster Site Henson sites or the Tubman sites, because and I think sooner or later there'll have to be something in South Carolina for the country river. Now that they have a new museum, maybe they will come into the network and put their story there. But because the people that we're studying are literally 5 states and really not a high estimate for how much they flew that travel and from how many times that they may escape. And so I think that the Network to Freedom, for me as a researcher and a person who comes on site, I bring it with me, which is different from other institutions that you may work with, but I'll pass it on.
Thank you very much, Dr. Roach. I suppose it's on. I think if one were to read the law, the public law that authorized the National Underground Railroad for Freedom, then it gives new directions in terms of how federal programs could be developed and administered. It really underscores the importance of collaboration and cooperation at all levels of our society, from the communities to the federal government. And this has been really the mainstay of the Underground Railroad program, the involvement of people from all walks of life and at all organizational levels. But I think it also speaks about the richness of our history that has not been documented and told. Because as Dr. Rose mentioned, if you were to look at probably 90% of historic sites and non-historic sites administered at the local, state, or national level, regional level, we've had footprints, as with the American Indians, just about on every acre of this land, if you will. And if you do some layering, if you will, unfolding the history, you'll find out that there's a story that has yet to be told. The Underground Railroad, I think, has broadened our horizon in terms of how to approach telling the American story. And I just applaud those who had the vision of giving the kind of language in the legislation, as you mentioned, Dr. Block, and certainly one of my contemporaries, Vincent DeForest, who has labored individual for many years, going back to the bicentennial, had a tremendous influence in work with the Congressional Black Caucus. So there's many that we can pay tribute to. Dr. Benjamin Paul, great in the story, like John Woodflake. And it's just an exciting book.
I wanted to just say one more thing. One of the things about the Network to Freedom is it does bring together scholars, preservationists, community members, church members, that we're dealing with multiple levels of tourism, but we're dealing with multiple levels of the public in a way that I don't see in many other areas of the government. And so we never know who we're going to see, who's going to come, but it really does bring together, in the modern context, a very eclectic network of people who are concerned for the story.
Those are some powerful insights. So I want to go back to the beginning for a minute, and in setting up this network, it's a new way of approaching conservation and preservation. What are some of the challenges that you're trying to move from the special resource study and entrance for landmark study into a program that will operate at multiple levels?
I had the opportunity to serve as the director when the program was authorized by public law and inaugurated. And because it presented a different framework of carrying out our business, the question was how best to organize one. And I guess that question still has not been fully answered for 25 years. And Diane can personally attest to that, as well as Dr. Sprinkle here and others of the National Park Service. Many familiar faces here. And that was really the challenge. What is this thing called network? I mean, we can manage a park like Yellowstone, or Douglas Home, what it is all about. And through the diligence, hard work, and the unwavering commitment to the program, as exemplified by Diane, her team, the network is, in reality, is working. What is so interesting is that standards that other programs are now being developed as a network. One of the more recent ones was the Civil War Movement Network. And then, lo and behold, Congress has authorized that we will now pay more attention to burial sites of enslaved persons and African American women. There's now set up a network of African American burial sites. So this thing called network, thanks to you, Diane, and others, people say that's the way to go because it involves people from all walks of life, and that is an enriching experience.
One thing I would say about that, and trying to figure out what does this thing mean in a network, the very first thing that we did was bring together community advocates from across the country, and I see my colleague Tara Larson, who was part of our original team.
Yes, right.
We brought together people that have been on the ground doing this for decades to ask them what it meant. What did it mean to them? What should we include? How should we operate this? And 25 years later, I would say that we're still operating off of the insights that they gave us.
Right.
And so if the network has any success, it is because it is what was created with the input of all the people doing this work.
I just want to add one thing, and I'm thinking about the Harriet Tubman Museum in Cambridge. So for many years, African American history was disregarded, really not given much attention, and African Americans themselves were keeping their own personal archives. They filled the museum in D.C. for bringing things out from under their beds and up in their closets. And so while the Network of Freedom came online, those people, those of us and many others who were holding the historical line on the local level when this history didn't matter to anyone else. And so I always want to pay homage to people who were doing this work because we knew it was an important, very important legacy. And it's great to see that the Network of Freedom and other government agencies have come on board. But I want to pay honor to the people who really maintained this story, that had stories to hand off when it was time to finally receive the recognition.
I certainly would underscore that. And again, with the level of engagement and the sincerity of the partners and the members as manifested in the amendment to the legislation that it provides increased funding is critically important, in particular the grant program that has way of getting people's attention. I want to speak for people know. Let me go on record or off record, whatever it is I am, without portfolio, so I can offer any suggestion. You know, the legislation was amended, lifting the initial $500,000 to $2.5 million, so it's $500,000 grant. That law can be amended as well. I need not say more. Let me just underscore a couple other things too that besides here. Is that this is exciting. The engagement of scholars at all levels. I'm talking about high school students who are now excited at doing some research, delve into the depth of our history. So the scholarly and then the whole connection in terms of engagement with our international neighbors in the Caribbean, up north in Canada, in the South, Mexico. So rich, so rich. And there is no excuse. I will not say this so much. Because Diane and all my friends already bring a smile to Tara's face. Is that there's no excuse. There's no excuse at all levels of the program not to engage our youth. I did not say more about it. This is a tremendous opportunity. And really the ratio. I would just plead bed of prayer, that as you return to your respective programs or sites, involve thirsty for this knowledge. Open the doors for them. Our youth, don't forget.
Okay, so one of the things that I've heard, and probably just said this a while ago, over and over, is how you can't document the Underground Railroad. It was secret, people wouldn't write anything down, they threw everything away or destroyed it. And I've learned in 25 years, there's nothing further from the truth. A lot of the documentation requires very tedious reading through newspapers and letters, and we have Harriet Tubman descended with us here today.
Yes.
Douglas Mitchell, who's been here for months, reading through every issue of all newspapers, looking for more information. It's very tedious work. But the other thing about it is, there's so much, as Cheryl alluded to, that is still in the hands of families and descendants of people that were involved in all parts of the story. And that is probably some of the richest information that's out there. So I encourage everybody who has elders in their family to talk to them about, sharing that information, putting it in a local library, or allowing it to be scanned or something, because the stories of these people are disappearing. But actually, that's a long way to get around to this question, which is, what is been the impact, Cheryl, particularly for you, of the network freedom and the modern Underground Railroad movement in advancing our understanding and scholarship of these stories?
Well, my first reaction is to say that it brought legitimacy, because it was a story that had been dismissed by the Academy for its entire existence. And even Wilbur Siebert, who I always have to remind people is a Harvard-trained historian, rather than elevate the Underground Railroad to the level of a Harvard-trained historian, they diminished the story down to folklore and questionability. They're not sure that the story was destabilized. And so I think the first thing the network did was begin to say, this is a program that is legitimate enough to be funded, to be recognized by the federal government, and started to bring noted first-rate scholars to the study. Because before that, you would have probably risked your credibility if you had said inside of a history meeting that public history is another matter that's set aside from history. So if you're in a straight history meeting, I think before the network meeting, and you're talking about the Underground Railroad, you are not really being viewed as a legitimate scholar. So I think first and foremost, that's one of the most important contributions. But it also opened up a pathway intellectually for us to be thinking about these things. So what happens when we cannot find the documents? I face this question every day, just about what are you going to do? So many scholars theorize that if they don't find it, because they're so excellent at research, then it does not exist. And so we have to really be careful, and I'm always saying, well, if I don't find it, I just haven't found it yet. But I think this is a huge distinction, because I've watched several Underground Railroad sites be destroyed because there was not enough documentation. And 2 or maybe 3 years later, it's kind of like, oh, my bad, look at that. Here's the documents. Here's what we found. Here's a letter. So that the work that we do is extremely important. It is also, as Diane said, very tedious. The funding needs to be tripled because of the amount of time we spend trying to get one paragraph together that is verifiable. The other piece, there's 2 more pieces. I map sites. I probably know a lot for my mapping. And that's because usually map makers don't lie. They might not label it, but they're not going to put a hill where a hill is not. They're not going to put a river where a river is not. They might make a little mistake in its course. And so mapping is a great way, once you get the terrain, you can read other sources to play the people in the landscape when you do not have a sort of a narrative that's going to, or a full narrative. So I really recommend for everyone that you look at mapping. And finally, as an ethnographer, which has really been my latest sort of iteration of self, is inside of ethnographic work, and I've been teaching people how to use ethnography responsibly. Say that. So it really makes a difference because people have these stories, and this is what I want to, I say this to everyone. The hallmark of oral history and ethnography is that there will be mistakes, which is completely opposite. When a historian hears a mistake, the whole story is suspect. When I hear a mistake, I'm on the right path. If you tell me in oral history that is completely accurate, I know one thing. You have consulted a source and cleaned up the story. So if I could just leave you with that gift to say, when you hear something that is diametrically opposed, which I just had this happen, my first thought is, how can this be? Because I know I'm holding two truths. So when you realize that you're holding two truths, particularly for the Underground Railroad, then you can start to say, you know, I have somebody that's supposed to be in Kansas in July, and I have a oral account that says he's in an icy river. Well, when I went back, it was the coldest winter on record, and I'm beginning to think maybe we'll honestly know by July. I don't know. So that we have to keep an open mind when we come up against things that don't line up.
Thank you very much. Just briefly mention another benefit of the Underground Railroad. In doing so, I'd like to acknowledge one of the Park Service who were with us from day one in crafting the initial strategy with my special assistant, Matt Woods, who's with us, and Renee Stone, who ultimately became my boss as a Deputy Chief of Staff for the Secretary of the Interior. She's here with us. And my all-time leader, she called me morning, noon, and night, and I said, when and where? And that's Ms. Sylvia Cyrus, who is the Executive Director for a solid association, but instead of African-American life and history. And she really embraces the mantra of Dr. Carter Wilson. If you don't tell them, they know. Thank you, Sylvia, for your leadership.
Something that's so desperately needed today. So desperately needed today. We are a nation of 338 all walks of life. But I have trouble. If seemingly we are drifting into separation, there's some difficult days ahead. The Underground Railroad teaches us that people from all walks of life came together to contribute towards a people moving freedom. But the lesson today, the Underground Railroad should touch all segments of our society. There is a benefit of the youngster in Brooklyn, New York, or in Paris, Texas, Jackson, Hawaii. Through understanding the lessons of the Underground, hopefully we can contribute to us being reunited as a people. But ladies and gentlemen, I have to tell you, that we see in the cotton fields and the cornfields in Texas. For me, the sun is high, but it's getting late. Ladies and gentlemen, reach out and embrace all of our brothers and sisters in the tradition of the Underground Railroad. Because we're in God's hands. I shall not say no.
You just answered the question that I was going to ask. Yeah,
it really helps me even in these troubled times. If we know and we watch, because we've been reading, we watched these abolitionists be gagged in the 1830s. We watched Congress tell them they can't speak about these things, don't bring this back up to us. We watched a handful, relatively speaking, of people help bring about an end to enslavement. If you think about that past, and when you begin to read, if you looked at the Washington Post article that had all of the people in Congress who were slaveholders, a very powerful, powerful article where they had the pictures of people. This was entrenched inside the fabric of this country so deeply that we chose to fight one another to the death rather than give it up. But we watched people come together, unite, and put so much pressure on so many different aspects of this country that I think it's a model, and we need to go back to it. We need to really begin to come back because we are in perilous times. Our history is now struggling, and this history that we're talking about right here is part of the history that's in peril. So we have to understand that our history has been and continues to be politicized. How are we going to begin to own it in a way that removes it, not removes, that's not the right word, but transcends the kind of control that people are attempting to inflict on what we basically are doing. I think that every school child not only should have a depth of understanding of African American history, I think everyone in the world should have an understanding of the depth of African American history, because I am going to just say this, because we know that anti-Black racism is around the world. It is not confined to the United States. Go to Brazil. Go to some of these other places. Go to Sweden, for heaven's sakes. You will begin to understand that this racism, but also what happens in the Underground Railroad and the Crucible, is a solution. But we have to begin to talk about it, and this is a great vehicle for bringing up all manner of problems in society and helping society heal. We don't usually use the word heal, but this is a vehicle for healing. And I think it's very important for us to understand that it has much more depth than it actually has received in the research and in the study of it.
So we just have a couple more minutes in this part of our program. So I want to ask many questions, but I guess what I want to leave with is, what do you see as potential future challenges and future opportunities for the network freedom and the study of the Underground Railroad?
Well, I think that one of the great, I'll start with the positive. The scanning of so many materials has made a huge difference, whether it is documenting the American South or Internet Archives or High Trust or all these other sites that now have a number of primary source materials available that we would have never had access to with that travel around the country. So that the study of the Underground Railroad is getting an easier, is not the right word, but less difficult. I would put it that way. I would love to see those of us in the Network of Freedom have some kind of access to the database of the applications so that we can trace the people that we're studying across all of these, because I know one of the things about the Network of Freedom is that the level of scholarship that goes into those applications, if anybody's tried to get one through and got it rejected, you know what I'm talking about. And the level of scrutiny and requirement is so high that when I get a Network of Freedom application, all I have to do is go back to the sources, find those sources, I'm good to go. So I think that this is imperative that we have a sort of a network access to the scholarship. That's one. I also think that there is a movement afoot, if you'll pardon the pun, to change the name. When you tell people that people escape on water, which I've been working with lately, they say, well, it's underground, it's a railroad, and so forth and so on. So there is a movement to change the name, which I'm pretty not interested in, because for a lot of reasons. But I think that then it is on us to expand the definition. Because we've done it once temporarily outside of 1830, back to the first shores of any kind of landing on the shore, but we also have to do it to talk about the other ways in which people receive freedom. And as a second little piece, because there are people who are purchasing their own freedom, that's another form, even though it's not movement, it's not the same way. So this concept of how you come to your freedom, I think is the ultimate umbrella for the entire conversation. But I think that network of freedom is absolutely essential for those of us who are doing the work.
The 1966 Historic Preservation Act established the National Registry of Historic Places. And I think that the level of engagement by you, ladies and gentlemen, individually collectively, have contributed to more nominations and ultimately sites and programs being recorded on this national list, which gives one an upmanship in terms of competing for funding, technical services, et cetera, et cetera. And what is so interesting that through that process, some of the sites of which may be a responsibility may ultimately be designated by the Secretary of the Interior with the blessing of the Advisory Council, probably the National Park System, as a national historic landmark. And then ultimately, maybe the unit of the national park systems that will give that area perpetual benefit of funding from the government. Dating myself, when I first joined the Green and Gray as Superintendent Morrison, whereas 61 years ago this year, there were only just two areas in the national park system that commemorated African Americans. Booker T. Washington in my now adopted state of Virginia and George Washington Harbor in Missouri. But I often say that Mr. Douglas and I went to the National Park Service in the same year that I donned the green and gray, June of '62, September 5, President John F. Kennedy signed the bill into law, authorizing the Douglas Home
Thank you so much for all the work that you do. And I want to thank each and every one of you for being here. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank Linda Harrison and her group for the powerful, powerful music. In March, NEH announced the latest recipients of our National Humanities Medals, and one of the recipients was Colson White. Colson is the author of the novel The Underground Railroad, which tells the story of Coral, an enslaved teenager who escapes from a plantation in Georgia. Whitehead writes so poignantly in this novel, "The world may be mean, but people don't have to be, not if they refuse." He points out we all have a choice, every day, as did the real men and women of the Underground Railroad. As Whitehead puts it, freedom was a community laboring for something lovely and rare. And I believe those words come directly to the heart of this history. It was not just a network of roads or waterways or passageways, but a community coming together, risking their lives and the lives of their loved ones because they saw an injustice, and they stood up. They saw their brothers and sisters suffering, and they reached out a hand in love. Harriet Tubman, who was central to this work, saw the horrors of slavery firsthand. And as she put it, "I had heard their groans and sighs, I had seen their tears, and I would give every drop of my blood, every drop of blood in my veins to freedom." There are moments in our lives when we realize we can't stand still. We can't sit back and watch those around us suffer. Tubman did not stand still. She put her life on the line so others would not just understand, but would experience freedom. At NEH, we are proud to partner with National Park Service to tell these stories. With our Claiming Freedom project, we are working with researchers and educators to bring these stories to life. The program's interns come to the project from this country's leading historically black colleges and universities. They are going through the archives, interviewing descendants, and helping us understand this history, our history. And we are grateful to scholar Karen Cook-Bell, a recipient of NEH's Dialogues on the Experience of War grant, for her work mentoring these program interns. As part of this partnership, we are also exploring how Indigenous communities help enslaved people on the path to freedom. In addition, on Excitement, NEH's website dedicated to K-12 classrooms, we provide lesson plans on the Underground Railroad and the people who came together to change the world. This work is also extended through our State Humanities Council partners. In 2018, Maryland Humanities awarded a grant to the Community College of Baltimore County Foundation to develop a humanities-based lecture and tour series on the Underground Railroad. In 2013, the Advocates Are Freedom in Caroline County on the Eastern Shore was the recipient of another council grant to develop an audio guide on a freedom seeker's journey along the Underground Railroad. And a new grant through Maryland Humanities, the Maryland Patson Memorial Shine Grant Program, named after the council's late director of grants and community engagement, who was born in Dorchester County, just 10 miles from this historic site, aims to lower barriers and provide more equitable funding to organizations statewide. I can think of a better time than now, as we near the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, to reflect on the history of the Underground Railroad, a history of hardships, but also of resilience, of people who saw a better future for themselves. In 1868, Frederick Douglass wrote a letter to Harriet Tubman, praising her for her work and dedication. Unlike Douglass, Tubman was not in the public eye. As Douglass put it, Tubman's work was only seen by a few trembling scarred and footsore bowmen and boys. The only witnesses to her devotion to freedom, he continues, were the midnight sky and the silent stars. Tubman wasn't in the spotlight. She wasn't the public orator that Douglass was, but she gave herself, all of herself, for the enslaved men and women around her, helping so many on their journey to freedom. Douglas said to Tubman, who lived her life not for future power, but for liberty, I know of no one who has willingly encountered more perils and hardships to serve our enslaved people than you have. These stories of hope in the face of so much hardship are stories we need to tell now more than ever. With the help of the National Park Service, NEH is helping to lift up these and other voices, because the Underground Railroad is one of many histories we cannot afford to forget. There's no better time than now to remember that people can surprise us. They can lend a helping hand when we least expect it. They can see injustice and challenge it. They can stand up and say change is possible. And it starts with
Hello again. I just wanted to thank all the people who came up to talk today, our panelists, for reminding us how important it is to be open-minded and be open to rethinking and revising some of our previous positions. And with that, I just want to pass it along to former Director Bob Stanton. He has a couple words he wants to say.
Thank you. It's rumored, I don't remember signing a document, but it's rumored, and I got this from some reliable sources, that our esteemed leader, a distinguished host, has decided to move to another chapter in her life. Ended a distinguished, illustrious career with the National Park Service. Dr. Diane Miller. Mr. President Douglas, I want to acknowledge you, congratulate you as you prepare to enter that next chapter on your journey. Because you and I go back, and I know that there were some difficult days when the budget was not there, the staff was there, but everyone expected you to continue to do great things. But one of the things that sustained Diane was her unwavering embrace of the legacy of Miss Harriet Tubman. She fully understood what would get you over, because she fully understood what the mantra of Miss Harriet Tubman was. Simply this: when the time gets, keep going. Keep going. Keep going. And you did it. You kept going. But then Mr. Douglas, I think he had you in mind. And you know only so well that out of all the men, he was perhaps the most prominent leader in terms of women's rights, women's suffrage, gaining the right to vote. Mr. Douglas said that when I ran away from slavery, so I said, when I advocated for emancipation, it was for my people. But when I stood up for the rights of women, 7 was out of order. Diane, on behalf of all your friends here, wherever you may go, we will be standing up for you. We will stand up for you, Diane. Congratulations.
I guess what I would say is that it's really all of you that have issue. It was meeting with the people in the communities and hearing their stories and seeing the passion that have been going on. It's still a joy to be able to do that and to see these sites and having been this job other than probably anybody should anymore. At one job, I've had the blessing of seeing how sites have transformed over time, and it's amazing. So we'll see when we get our video up some transformations of sites, and so those are the things that are really support over the years is also very
The leadership of Diane is unbelievable. The development relationship with the National Park Conservation, working closely with Alan Spears, the National Trust, so many organizations, but one of the beautiful examples of that kind of relationship is with the Association for the Study of American Observation. And I'm going to draft the esteemed executive director, Sylvia Cyrus, to come up to say a word. Hello, Dr. Lobson.
Thank you. Mom says that it is me who calls on him in the middle of the night, but I assure you that it is the other way around. It's hard to follow Mom, let me just say, I'm still working on that. After 20 years at Asala, I'm still in awe of his leadership, and he certainly is an inspiration to all of us who believe in preservation and how important our history is. Bob, thank you so much for always standing by this network of freedom. I will tell you that 20 years ago when I came to Asala, and I didn't really know as much about the scholarship in Black history. I knew I loved it. I knew it was a part of my family. When I came to Asala, there was a gentleman by the name of Vincent DeForest who said, I would like to just have a little space someplace and have some people come and talk about the network to freedom.
Yeah.
And of course, not being in history, I was like, network to who was what? Over the years, the Association for the Study of African American Life and History has supported the network to freedom. And I am delighted to be able to say that through the past, and I'm reminded of that every day as I sit in what would have been Dr. Carter G. Woodson's chair. I often smile to myself as I fight some of the battles that we all must fight in your leadership. And I can hear people say, but you're no Carter G. Woodson. Diane Miller, you are a Hamilton.
All right.
I will tell you that divine intervention has been a part of the last 20 years of my life as it related to Asala. And I was so shocked a month ago when Diane called me and said, left me a message, you gotta call me today. Get Diane on the phone. And she announced that she was retired. Quite frankly, I was hoping that she would retire, kind of like Bob Stanton, So hopefully that would spill over here so that would happen. But I said, Diane, you're leaving now? And she said, it's the 20th anniversary. I've labored in the vineyard. I've seen the fruit. And now we're ready to pass it on to the next generation. And I said, how profound. And that Asala, the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, in April, voted to award Diane the Council Award with special recognition for the great work that she has done. Diane is coming to Jacksonville, Florida, which is where we're having our conference, and she was like, well, I don't think I'm going to be able to come. I don't think I'm going to why she wasn't here. So Diane, if you would mind coming over to your partner in crime. I would like to present to you on behalf of Marvin Delaney, the president of the association and the executive council of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, the council award of special recognition for your tireless dedication to the work of the Network to Freedom, the Underground Railroad, and the support of the history of Africans and those who came and toiled here. Enough cannot be said about your dedication. We have really fought some battles together, and for those of you I know in this room, especially as small as it is, I'm sure you know what that means. And to stay with it for 25 years means so much, and I am so proud to be able to present this to you on this occasion.
Beautiful.